So one of the things that I love to do is to create time-lapse videos of flowers. Flowers are easy because they grow and die very quickly. What I am going to do today is make a video of a dying set of flowers. I sell stock photography, I do stock video, and so I will a lot of times submit these to my stock companies. They're fun to do, they're easy. You could do it as a flower blooms or you could do it as they die. I have done both and they turn out really cool. So the way I have my setup today is there's a few things you need for this. Number one, I use a flash and I use a large umbrella. This is a 49-inch umbrella. And I have my light set up to go off with, this is a Einstein light, and these work. This is a great light. I've had this for years. All of these things will be linked in the bottom so you can check them out. But this light is perfect. It works really well. What I do is I set up my scene and I get my camera all set up. So I'm using a 50mm lens, a Sigma 50mm, and I'm actually using, this is a Replica, this is a company called Replica, and they do these little in-home studio setups. You could absolutely use a table for this. I found that because they have a way to do bottoms and tops, like it was easy for me to tape my backdrop paper to it, or they also sell backdrops that are really pretty. This thing is adjustable, so one of the problems I had was I would get everything all set up and then maybe couldn't get my camera set up to the right height, or my table wasn't right, so you can easily adjust all this stuff. It just makes things easier. You could absolutely do this with a table, but you need to have it in a place where you don't mind a flash going off for several days, and also in a spot where it's not going to get bumped or moved, because if you move anything on here, then it ruins your shot. So I set up my flowers. These are chamomile flowers, and they are about to start dying. I have removed the water from the vase because I don't want to continue to feed them. I actually want them to wilt and die, and that will allow them to die a lot quicker. I am using a tripod. This is a Manfrotto tripod. I love this tripod because it can do a whole bunch of different stuff, but there are different tripods out there. You do not have to get a high expensive one. You could use a tabletop if you want, just as long as you're not going to have anyone move it. As I mentioned before, my problem that I would find is that sometimes you need to be able to adjust your stuff separately, and a tripod allows you to do that. And then the last thing is I have a, not the last thing, but one of the things is I have an empty card because I'm going to be taking a lot of pictures over time. But the most important thing I got that I have used is, this is a battery that actually plugs in. So this battery plugs into the wall and it goes directly into my camera. Now I have a Nikon camera, I use a Nikon battery. They make these for all different kinds of cameras. As I mentioned, I will link the Nikon below, and I'll link a couple of other brands of battery. But basically this is like a faux battery that gives your camera power, so you don't have to worry about it running out of battery, because it does actually happen pretty quickly when you are creating a time-lapse photograph. So let's get this battery right back in here. Hold on a second. So the battery just slips right in there perfectly well, and the cord gets plugged into a wall. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to turn your camera onto live view. At least that's what I like to do. You really also should turn your camera off before you pull the battery out, because it just made an error on my camera. I fixed it by hitting the shutter button, but just so you know, it does make a lot of sense to turn the camera off before you remove its power source. Anyway, okay, so I put my camera in live view and I check my focus. I had my focus set, but then I moved my camera, so I'm going to check it again. I'm going to check it 3 times. I put my lens into manual mode because I have had it in autofocus before, and sometimes it decides to change the focus on whatever else, and I ended up doing a time lapse for 3 days that was in and out of focus the whole time. So you want to put it in manual mode so nothing changes on your camera. So what I do is I put it in live view and I zoom in so I can really check my focus. And I just manually focus using the focus ring until the picture on the screen is in perfect focus. And then I take a test shot. So right now, my settings are, I have it on a shutter speed of 50, 1/50. I have it as an f-stop of f5, and I have an ISO of 160. Obviously, your settings are going to be different depending on what light you're using and what your room looks like and all of that, but that's a good place to start. If you want more in focus, you want a higher f-stop, so you're going to want to have that at a f6, f7, and then if that's the case, then you maybe want to put your ISO up a little bit. So I'm actually going to pop mine up just a little higher. I'm going to put my ISO up a little higher. So now I'm at ISO 320. I'm at an f-stop of a 7.1 and still at my shutter speed of 1/50. The shutter speed doesn't matter because the camera's taking the pictures. Well, not that it doesn't matter, but it is not important to have a higher shutter speed when you're using a flash because the flash freezes motion, and also you're not hand holding this camera. The tripod is holding the image, so you could have a shutter speed of very low to let in more light if you need to. Okay, so we're going to check our focus again. We're going to get it back in focus. I will check my focus 5 or 6 times before I'm done, because as I mentioned, I have done this before and I have gotten to the end and realized nothing's in focus. I've had it out of focus. I've had it autofocus on the wrong item. So I do this like just over and over again just to make sure I have it right. Okay, so I feel good about that. I'm going to check my settings again. I always take a picture to make sure that it looks good on the back of the camera, and then I check my histogram. Your histogram is going to be on the back, and I make sure that no brights are blown out, which means if I've overexposed my image, it means that I have too much white. The light is basically ruining parts of my image. So in this case, it might blow out the whites of the flower before it blew out anything out. Lighter colors tend to blow out first. So I check my histogram to make sure that those are not blown out. There are plenty of tutorials on proper exposure, and I'm not going to go into that too much, so you can check those out if you need them. Okay, so then I go to my menu. Oh, the other thing I want to make sure is you want to make sure that once this made into a video, it's difficult to crop. You run out of space and things, so I really try to make sure that it's exactly where I want it to be. So if I want my vase to be in the very middle, then it needs to be in the very middle when I start taking the photographs. It needs to look exactly the way I want it to look. So I'm really picky about what this looks like before I take the picture. So I moved it a little bit, so we're going to refocus again, just to make sure that everything's in focus. And I am focusing on the flower that is closest to me. So I'm actually focusing on this little flower right here. And that allows me, because if this is in focus, then everything else is going to be not in focus, but will be in less focus, but it will still be in a fairly good focus. So I focus on the one thing that I want closest to me in focus, and then the focus falls off behind it. So that is how I approach making sure everything's in focus. Check it again. We'll take another photo. Okay, that is looking like exactly the way I want it to look, which is wonderful. I am ready to go. So what I do now is I go to my menu, and on Nikon you're looking for interval timer shooting. So I actually have that set up on a special menu on my camera, but there are almost every DSLR or mirrorless camera will have an interval timing. They're all in different spots. You should get your manual out and figure out where it is on your camera. I go to my settings, And so I can determine how long I want it to go for. So I can, typically what I do is when I do a long exposure, I do a 2 to 3 day image capture. So this camera is going for 2 to 3 days, but the 24 hours a day, 2 to 3 days, but it's only taking an image every 10 minutes. Is typically what I do every 10 minutes or so. You do have to do a little bit of math so that you can figure out how long you want your finished piece to be. So if there's 24 frames in 1 second, then you have to work backwards. If you want a 30-second exposure, 30-second video, you need to multiply so that you make sure that you capture enough frames to make this happen for you. I personally am not a math person. I am not a drawing with a ruler person. I like to have at it. So I have found that I take a 3 days every 10 minutes, and then I can cut it down if I need. I can speed it up if I need, or I can slow it down if I need. So I am getting a nice long image. So there are settings here for you to choose how long you want it to have, how many shots, how you want it to be. And so it's basically what will happen is, so right now I have it on a 5-second interval, and what I want it to be is on a 10-minute interval. So we're going to change the settings so it's down to every 10 minutes. And so what will happen is you hit that 10 minutes and hit OK. And you hit start, and basically what will happen is you walk away from your camera. Well, I always check to make sure everything looks good again when I take that first picture, because this is the best time to restart it before your flowers start to die. And you hit the start button, and it's going to, when I walk away, don't touch it, but then you can see it'll take the first picture automatically, and then 10 minutes from now it's going to take another photo, and 10 minutes from now it's going to take another photo, and 10 minutes from then it's going to take another photo. So I just keep going, and then you come back in 3 days and you have a beautiful time lapse of dying flowers. Don't forget to remove the water, or else you will have a 3-day time lapse of blooming flowers and you don't end up with anything. So anyway, I hope this helps. Now you can take a look at what we made right here.